Welcome back. It's Mark from financialfreedomandodyssey.com once again with another video. Today we're going to take a look at Q3 earnings on my single stocks. So back at the start of the year, I believe I was holding around 6 securities, but we have now cut them down to 3. So those 3 stocks are Google, AMD, and Shopify. And we are in the middle of earnings season, but just as of yesterday, both AMD and Shopify have reported their earnings, and Google a few weeks ago. So let's dive right in. Starting off with performance. So on the performance side, Shopify is still number 1 in terms of percentage gains. That makes sense. We've held it for going on 3 years. AMD and Google is less than a year. So good to see that there. AMD had far outstretched Google up until I'd say the last month or maybe 6 weeks or so. Google started to pick up steam throughout September and October. And it'll be interesting to see, how it shakes out over the coming weeks as the market has time to digest the earnings and some of the FUD that has been spread settles out. Like yesterday, Michael Burry also announced that he is shorting again, but I guess that is what he does. So hopefully that shouldn't come too much of a surprise to anyone. Diving into the Google earnings, which came out on October 23rd of 2025, they had another fantastic quarter. And I think a lot of it has to do with them settling across several lawsuits, particularly the big one with the DOJ, which settled, or I guess was ruled on back in August, and unfortunately Google was ruled against, and they're still working out what the punishment will be. It's still in that remedies phase, so we'll have to see what happens there, but at least the ruling has been made. And the worst thing for a company is the unknown, right? Especially in the stock market. Stock market in general doesn't like the unknown, so it is somewhat known, I guess. We don't know what the punishment is, but anyways, enough on that. Let's take a look at the revenue stream. So all the revenue streams across the board were up except for the Google network here. And that one was slightly down compared to Q3 of 2024. So we can see Google search well over 50 million here. YouTube ads smashed it. Subscriptions smashed it. Actually, Google Cloud even higher percentage-wise compared to those other ones. So really smashed it, I guess. Other bets a little bit lower. I think other bets include things like Waymo. And I did see the guidance that Waymo is slotted to start operating in London, UK, I believe in January. So hopefully we can get some traction overseas there. And the biggest thing to call out here is the total revenue. So total revenue of 102 billion. So that is the first ever 100 billion quarter. And this also marks revenue doubling over the past 5 years. So that was a fun signed off here. No plans to sell this one as of yet. Now AMD reported on November 4th. Continues to accelerate forward, and this one, as I've kind of mentioned earlier, really hasn't always been straight up. Tends to jump up, jump down, right? So the market has been very, very touchy, very reactive recently. Anecdotally, I feel like it's been, say, 5 green days for every 1 red day, and I will take that ratio. I guess it depends how big the green days are and how big the singular red day is, but it's been up and to the right. So happy with that one. Third quarter revenue set a record 9.2 billion, which was a 36% increase year over year. The growth was driven by demand across all of the businesses. Gross margin was 54%, which is the same as last quarter. And this 9.2 billion beat the top end of the guidance from last quarter, which, if you don't remember, guidance was 8.7 plus or minus 300 million. So yeah, beat that by about 200 million, which is fantastic. or I guess you should probably go with the mid-range of that because they set an amount plus or minus 300. So technically beat it by half a billion. And then guidance for next quarter is 9.6 billion plus or minus 300 million once again. So fingers crossed, but if they beat it just as well or close to as well, we may see the first quarter of over 10 billion in revenue for AMD. Breaking down the different branches, so the big guy, the data center, so revenue up to 4.3 billion, which marks up 22% year over year. This is primarily driven by strong demand for the 5th gen processors and the MI350 series GPUs. So like we talked about, they were really starting to roll last quarter. They're really rolling this quarter. Can't wait until we see the MI400 or 450 series when they start ramping up next year. Operating income was 1.1 billion versus 1 billion a year ago. So mostly driven by higher revenue, partially offset by the higher operating expenses that AMD has had. The next biggest cost center, actually I should say revenue generating center, is client and gaming. So it was up an incredible 73% year over year to 4 billion. So that's wild. That's absolutely wild. So yeah, this is driven by sales of Ryzen processors, higher custom revenue, and strong demand for the Radeon gaming GPUs. Now, the operating income has definitely increased a lot. Like, it's not quite a triple, but close to a triple. But anyways, still making a ton of profit there. Embedded was slightly down. So it was down 8% year over year. So just lower demand in embedded, and it's, fairly small compared to the other two. So nothing to really worry there. And short summary for this one, I'm going to continue to hang on to AMD. I have had this thought in the back of my mind a few times where should I just, take the gains that I have had and just, roll it into S&P 500 or even the triple Qs. But I don't think we're at that time yet. I think there's plenty of up and to the right to come. Not necessarily all at once, but yes. All right, so the last one, Shopify, which also came out on November 4th. The revenue was 2.84 billion, which is a 32% increase year over year and well above analyst expectations. Gross merchandise volume, GMV, is 92 billion, which is also 32% increase year over year. Yeah, these 30% increases are absolutely wild for a company of that size. I've worked in like the startup landscape for a while, and that's essentially what startups target is that 30 to 40%, 40 being like really good. Anything over that, absolutely gravy. But companies of this size to continue to get that is pretty wild. So EPS slightly beat the forecast. Merchant Solutions revenue up 38%, subscription up 15%, operating income 53% increase, but slightly missed analysts' expectations. So that might, cause the short-term dip. We'll have to see when the market opens here later today. But again, that would be short-term. Free cash flow is 507 million with 18% margin. So highlighting their ability to translate growth into cash, which is pretty good because it wasn't too long ago that they were in the hole. So love that. Taking a look at their strategy and growth drivers. So they're focusing on international expansion. So Europe now represents 21% of overall revenue, and Asia Pacific growth also came up as well. Can't remember the exact number there. Enterprise sector is a big one, right? If you get big brands, looks like what they're focusing on, such as Starbucks and Canada Goose, that can be a high percentage in terms of revenue, right? Like take a look at how well and this isn't going to be the same comparison, but take a look at how well Nvidia has done, right? And where has all Nvidia's gains come from? Well, it's come from essentially selling their chips to like the top 5 companies in the world. So yeah, a couple big brands can mean a lot. And then AI. So AI has been noted to be essential to product development. This is true for pretty much every company. AI is still super buzzy, even if what you're offering in terms of AI is like the most rudimentary. I feel like that still kind of like gets people in the door at least, which I think people will um, be able to cut through the BS at some point, but and you'll have to like actually offer really um, useful solutions using AI. But I still feel like right now AI is can be flashy, and you can kind of get some people just by kind of throwing out that buzzword. So, anyways, gotta play the same game as everyone else, right? This marks the 12th quarter of revenue beats for them, so that is awesome. And yeah, looking at my own gains on there, so I'm now up 3.5x on Shopify. And like I said last month, I did kind of plan to sell back when it hit the actually it was 3x milestone, but I think I'm going to continue to hold on to it. Could be a mistake, and quite a few friends of mine have been essentially exiting their single stocks and just going into the market weighted ETFs like VOO, that sort of thing, and just not worrying about it. But I want to eke out a little bit more gains first before I do that. And overall, I can contribute the success of these 3 stocks to a fair amount of my TFSA gains that I've seen, especially over the last year or so, which is, as I said, exciting and troubling at the same time. It kind of makes one think, hey, maybe I should have just put everything in these 3 stocks. But then you also think, if you look back to 2022 and you saw how much they dropped by, I think Shopify dropped by like almost 90%. Google's probably like 60%. I know Meta was in like the 70s, which was wild. AMD, I think it was close to Shopify. Like it got absolutely crushed. So makes you wonder, would you be able to hold through that? So, and I guess you never really know. I would like to think that after the few years that I've been in this and how much time I spent thinking about it, I would be able to. But I don't know. You can think yourself into bad situations sometimes when it comes to investing. The other consideration that I have here is that I do still have a fair amount of higher yielding tickers. And if you just look at stock price, it does, like those look like they're doing significantly worse, where in some cases they're actually doing better. Like I haven't checked it recently, but the HDIV by Hamilton was beating just the market comparison, which I guess you could do VCE from Vanguard for the TSX 60. So either way, I'm very happy with how my portfolio has done this year, and as we looked at back in October, my performance of my portfolio is higher than I believe every market, even including the Nasdaq gains year to date. So love to see that. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to come out next week with one. Just give a little teaser here. The article, well, I'm going to write an article for sure. Not sure if I'm going to record a video on it, but I likely will. And it's going to be looking back at the single stocks that I sold, where they are now versus where the securities are that I bought with the proceeds. Take care. Cheers.